Hello, my name is Molly Stout, and this is my video of my plan of instruction based on my literary inquiry. The literary inquiry question that I have is, how can I support my second grade students in recognizing their own miscues while reading aloud? I picked this question because I thought that it was important. I've struggled with how can I support my students in this sense with their oral reading. I would like them to attend to their own miscues instead of just reading over them. I would like them to recognize and fix them without my help. So I wanted to learn more about this question that I have. I have two sources that I received my information from. The first was a journal article, and it is titled Miscue Analysis, A Glimpse into the Reading Process by Muhammad. This was a journal article that I used. It provided a nice study for me to see how a miscue analysis is used using a coding system, a control group of students, to see how their oral reading and miscues affect their reading comprehension. The other source that I have is a dissertation. It is called An Analysis of One Teacher's Response to Student Miscues. This is by Pritchard. I thought that this was a very good source of information to use, and I plan on using it in the future as well. Okay, for my plan of instruction, I will break it down into context, purpose, goals, and objectives. The context is I teach second grade, and I have an inclusion classroom. I'm going to be showing you my instruction. It was a small group, guided reading group. For my class, I have 18 students. 6 are classified with disabilities, which range from learning disabilities to ADHD to other health impaired. 3 students receive ELA and math instruction in a resource room setting where they get more individualized attention, and my 3 are receiving instruction in an in-class support setting. Those 3 you will learn more about that were in my guided reading group. Okay, now I will tell you about the purpose, goals, and objectives. The purpose of this fluency lesson was for students to start recognizing their own miscues while reading aloud. Students continue to track their reading as they read aloud. So they have been doing that this year. They're going to continue to do it, and I had a couple strategies I used to help them along that process. For my goals, I had 2 goals for my students. Kind of general, but I wanted them to understand my expectations of what it was for this lesson. Students will become more aware of their mistakes when reading. Students will apply fix-up strategies to their reading and try to correct themselves accurately as they read. And you'll see later on some type of tools that I used that I think that they liked. The objectives that I have, I tried to keep them as minimal as possible. I told my students that I think less is more in this sense, trying to have them focus on specific skills instead of many of them that are not always important at the time. So I thought that these were the most important. The student will be able to read a text at their instructional level with purpose and understanding. So I think that them understanding their miscues and fixing their miscues will help them read with understanding. The student will be able to read a text at their instructional level orally with accuracy, appropriate rate, and expression on successive readings. The student will be able to use context to confirm or self-correct word recognition and understanding rereading as necessary. And this was used a lot throughout my lesson. Okay, I will give you a narrative description of my instruction. Before I give you that, I did want to say that I wanted to set a purpose for myself as the teacher, and I wanted to reflect on what my purpose was there. And I wanted to be aware and examine my students' oral reading ability. I want to recognize their types of miscues that they make, and I think that helps me plan ahead for my future instruction. So what I will learn about their miscues will help me know what I can do next to help them with their understanding of the reading. And as I was reading, I was taking a running record of the students' oral reading, and I used a coding system to help identify what types of miscues they'll make. So I will get more into that when I tell you about my guided reading group. But in the beginning of our instruction, this is during our ELA block, we use the Journeys Literacy Program, and we are on Lesson 8, and the theme is weather. And the comprehension skill that we are working on in this lesson, and it is also revisited from previous lessons, is main idea and details. So looking into my classroom at this moment, we have the general education teacher, my co-teacher, is also pulling a guided reading group. They are reading What is the Wind by Eric Barneveld, and again they are using the comprehension strategy, main idea and details that they're working on through that. Other students in the classroom will be found working on our digital non-fiction reading program called CoreClicks that is individualized for them, that they get to have different leveled readings on, and they're also working on main idea and details. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about my guided reading group. I'm working with my 3 students, all who have disabilities. I have one student who has a learning disability, I have one student who has ADHD, and another who is other health impaired. And all of their reading abilities is affected, but they are all making great growth and strides in their own pace. Okay, so before reading, I wanted my students to read a short familiar text that they have already read as a review. I want this to get their engines moving and get them ready for guided reading instruction so that they have that fluency already built from the previous book that they read. I quickly reviewed sight words and vocabulary. It was very quick. It was not meant to take a long time. I was reviewing sight words that they'll be reading in the text, and I was pre-teaching vocabulary that they will find in the text that they may not have known. Setting the purpose for reading. Each student of mine has a reading goal that is on a post-it note that they have chosen from my cafe board, and I wanted them to understand what it is that we are working on in this lesson. So I have one student who is working on making a mental image in her head to help her understand with what she reads. I have another student who is working on retelling the story with details, and then I have another student who's working on making predictions. So all of them have different goals, and I address those goals in different ways, but they're all working on fixing their miscues as well and recognizing them, so that's why I pulled them. I model with a mentor text to show what good readers do. I introduced the text, and I wanted to start off by asking their background knowledge and seeing what they already knew about the topic so that they could have an idea before they read. We took a picture walk through the text, and we made predictions. Our predictions were pretty close, and they did a very nice job in the beginning. During reading, I reminded them that in our guided reading group, we whisper, read to ourselves as I call on an individual student to read aloud, and I took a running record of every student of their oral reading. I stopped at certain points of the text, and I wanted to discuss with them what was read. I had students that came across a word that they did not recognize, and I encouraged them to decode on their own. A lot of my students have different ways of decoding, and that is fine with me. We have reading buddies. Those are stuffed animals that provide the reminder of what the strategy is for decoding words, like sounded out the snake, Ellie the elephant, which is reminding you to read loudly, look at the picture, slow down, all of those strategies that help. And I provided modeling as well to how to use those strategies. After reading, we went back to the text, and I showed them one rule of what good readers follow. I wanted them to stop at punctuation marks, such as ending of sentences, to help break up sentences, and that shows that we are fluent readers because we are stopping at a sentence and then starting up at another, and I allowed them to practice. My follow-up activity that I wanted them to practice on their own was they chose a book of interest, and it was at their level. I tried to help them as best I could without hindering their interest and choice, and I wanted them to apply the fix-up strategies to unknown words as they were reading, and they did a nice job. For my reflection, what I have learned, I encourage students to use these fix-up strategies that work best for them. I understand that not every fix-up strategy will make sense to a student, or they don't need that strategy, so I allow them to stick with one strategy that they need, and I always want to bring out their confidence in that as well, so they don't need all of them, but just one will work. By understanding the pattern of a student's amount of miscues and what they make, I know that that will help me improve with my teaching and how I can help them for the rest of my instruction. And I recognize that if I did not make a note of their patterns of their miscues, I would not know what areas to work on. As a result, what are my potential future questions? What happens if a student keeps making the same miscue over and over? If it is a sight word, do I provide them more practice on that sight word in different modalities? If the unknown word is a vocabulary word, do I provide more practice and exposure to the vocabulary word? That question is always what's been coming in my mind. I want to make sure that I fix that problem right away with a sight word. So with a few of my students, they're growing from such a low level of reading that even sight words are hard for them to decode. So that question always kind of pops up into my mind, and I'm still going to be working through that. Thank you very much. This was my plan of instruction.